Hey everyone, welcome back. If you are gearing up for exams and need to absolutely nail Unit 1 on Indian rural development, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're taking a mountain of textbook material and boiling it down into a rapid-fire, highly structured revision explainer. We're going to break down the complex concepts, give you vivid real-world examples, and hand over the exact frameworks you need to score full marks. So grab your notepads, get comfortable, and let's lock this information in.
So here's our game plan for today's explainer. We're going to tackle what is rural development, why does India actually need it, the national goals, that tricky framework of scope versus components, and finally, the real-world roadblocks to growth. Let's get right into it. All right, part 1. What is rural development? Let's build that solid foundation. When you get asked to define this on a test, please do not make the classic mistake of just talking about money or farming. It is way bigger than that. Rural development means improving the overall day-to-day life of people living in villages through 3 distinct pillars: economic, social, and cultural growth. It's not just handing a farmer a shiny new high-tech tractor for economic growth, right? It's equally about social growth, like building a local clinic so families don't have to travel 50 kilometers for basic health care. And it's about cultural growth, which might mean helping local artisans preserve and actually make a living off their traditional crafts. It is a complete, multidimensional upgrade to village life. To actually pull that abstract idea off, the whole process boils down to 3 logical, sequential steps that you should absolutely memorize. Step 1, reduce poverty. You have to stabilize the immediate financial crisis first. Step 2, provide basic needs. Once the extreme poverty is addressed, you bring in the essentials like clean water, reliable power, and primary education. And then, step 3, create village jobs. This is the long-term play, ensuring the village becomes totally self-sufficient rather than relying on outside aid forever. Think of it like a ladder. You stabilize, you support, and then you sustain. Moving on to section 2, why does India actually need this? Why is there an entire academic unit dedicated to this one topic?
Well, to put it into perspective, the sheer undeniable scale of the situation is kind of mind-blowing. We are talking about over 70% of India's entire population living in rural areas. That is hundreds of millions of people. India's broader economy is fundamentally anchored in agriculture. So if the villages don't grow, the nation literally cannot grow. You just can't build a thriving, modern economy if nearly 3/4 of your people are left out of the development equation. It's impossible.
But the day-to-day reality in that 70% slice can be incredibly harsh, and you really need to use these concrete examples in your exams to show you get it. We're looking at systemic low income and severe poverty, a massive lack of schools and health facilities. But really think about those last 2 points, missing infrastructure and rain-dependent farming. Imagine being a farmer whose entire yearly income relies completely on whether or not the monsoon rains show up on time, just because there is zero irrigation infrastructure. Or hey, maybe you do grow a perfect crop of tomatoes, but because there are no paved roads, your truck gets stuck in the mud and your whole harvest rots before it ever hits the city market. That right there is why rural development is an absolute urgent necessity.
Okay, section 3, goals and national importance. How does fixing those local, village-level problems translate into massive national success?
Well, the specific goals hit right back at those exact harsh realities we just talked about. The objectives are super clear. Aggressively slash poverty and unemployment to lift up that baseline standard of living. Bring in the missing education and healthcare. Build the actual infrastructure. We're talking laying down literal asphalt for roads, stringing up power lines, and piping in clean water. And crucially, a major goal is empowering women and weaker sections of society. A killer example to use here is the creation of self-help groups. This is where women in a village pool their savings to give each other microloans. It lets them start small cottage industries, like tailoring or food processing, without ever needing a traditional bank. It is a real game changer.
And here's the so what of it all. When those local goals are hit, the entire nation levels up. By empowering that massive rural population, you actively crush the glaring gap between the wealthy urban centers and the poorer villages. You directly boost the national GDP. And this is a huge one. You stop mass rural to urban migration. If people have solid jobs and good hospitals right in their own hometown, they aren't going to pack up and flood into already overcrowded cities looking for a better life. Plus, by modernizing agriculture, you ensure national food security. The whole country eats because the villages succeed. All right, section 4. Let's dig into the actual mechanics of rural development. Now, heads up, exams absolutely love testing this. Seriously, this is a classic exam trap, so pay close attention to the difference between scope and components. Think of scope as the big picture, the broad thematic areas we want to improve. The what? Things like agriculture, cottage industries, health, and women's empowerment. These are your destinations. Components, on the other hand, are the specific, actionable levers you pull to actually make that change happen, the how. So if your scope is agriculture, your component is rolling out modern farming tech or executing land reforms for fair distribution. If the scope is health and education, the component is the literal physical act of building schools and hospitals. Just remember, scope is the broad category, component is the physical action. Keep that crystal clear. Okay, bringing it home with Section 5, Roadblocks to Rural Growth. Time for the reality check. If the goals are so amazing, why hasn't this happened overnight, right? Well, when you write about these roadblocks, always use what I call the for instance rule. Don't just drop an academic term, translate it into real life. For instance, seasonal unemployment. What does that actually look like? It means a farmer works incredibly hard for 6 months during the growing season, but once that harvest is over, they have absolutely zero income for the rest of the year. Poor connectivity isn't just about potholed roads anymore. Today, it means absolutely no internet access, which literally cuts rural students off from the global digital economy. And lack of farming tech means relying on outdated, low-yield manual labor instead of modern machinery, keeping profits brutally low. And it's not just the economic or technological roadblocks. There are massive, deeply entrenched social and infrastructural hurdles, too. Widespread poverty means nobody has the spare capital to invest in upgrading things. High illiteracy makes it incredibly tough to train workers for modern jobs. Poor health drains a family's resources. And we absolutely must acknowledge social barriers like caste discrimination, which can totally prevent the fair distribution of resources and opportunities within a village. When you are writing your essay answers, making sure you include these social barriers right alongside the economic ones, that is exactly what will secure you those full marks for a comprehensive answer. So, we've nailed the definitions, the high stakes, the tricky frameworks, and the grounded realities. You are now armed with the ultimate blueprint for Unit 1. But before we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to ponder as you review your notes today. If over 70% of the population is rural, and they are facing these intense, traditional roadblocks we just outlined, how can modern technology, things like mobile internet, digital banking, and AI farming, finally be the key to leapfrogging these hurdles and unlocking India's true potential? Think about how you would tackle that in an exam. Keep studying smart, use this structure, and you are absolutely going to crush it.